The Coaching Habit. Say less, ask more and change the way you lead forever. Author, Michael Bungay-Stanier. Part 4. Stick to questions starting with, what? Peter Senge was big in the 1990s when his book The Fifth Discipline and its theme of the learning organization caught the imagination of executives everywhere. One of the tools he introduced was called the 5 Whys, a self-explanatory process to work backwards through a story to end a root cause of a pernicious, recurring problem. Simon Sinek carried on that theme with his popular book, Start With Why, How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action. He also has a great TED Talk. For Sinek, organizations must have as their foundation absolute clarity about the why of their existence if they are going to inspire people, customers and employees both to stay engaged with their brand. Ignore both authors. Yes, there's a place for asking why in organizational life. And no, it's not while you're in a focused conversation with the people you're managing. Here are 2 good reasons. You put them on the defensive. Get the tone even slightly wrong and suddenly your why come across as what the hell were you thinking? It's only downhill from there. You're trying to solve the problem. You ask why because you want more detail. You want more detail because you want to fix the problem. And suddenly you're back in the vicious circles of overdependence and overwhelm. If you're not trying to fix things, you don't need the backstory. Stick to questions starting with what and avoid questions starting with why. It's no accident that 6 of the 7 essential questions are what questions. Here's your new habit. When I'm tempted to ask them why, instead of beginning the question with why, I will reframe the question so it starts with what. So, as some examples, instead of why did you do that, ask what were you hoping for here. Instead of why did you think this was a good idea, ask what made you choose this course of action. Instead of why are you bothering with this, ask what's important for you here. An irresistible 1, 2, 3 combination. The first 3 questions can combine to become a robust script for your coaching conversation. You'll be surprised and delighted at just how often these are exactly the right questions to ask. Open with, what's on your mind? The perfect way to start. The question is open but focused. Check in. Is there anything else on your mind? Give the person an option to share additional concerns. Then begin to focus. So what's the real challenge here for you? Already the conversation will deepen. Your job now is to end what's most useful to look at, ask, and what else is the real challenge here for you? Trust me, the person will have something. And there may be more. Probe again. Is there anything else? You'll have most of what matters in front of you now. So, get to the heart of it and ask, so, what's the real challenge here for you? 4. The foundation question, in which the question that lies at the very heart of adult-to-adult relationships is discussed. How to be a grown-up. Peter Block is a brilliant thinker about how we behave at work. His book Flawless Consulting should be on the bookcase's top shelf for anyone who's trying to get anything done within organizations, as should the answer to how is yes. I've heard him frame the work he does as giving people the responsibility for their own freedom. That's a big statement that raises as many questions as it answers. One of those questions might be what's freedom, and Block would probably respond by saying that it is being able to show up as an adult in our work and being able to deal with those around us as adults too. The foundation question, what do you want? Taking responsibility for your own freedom is notoriously difficult to do. Block end an adult-to-adult relationship as one in which you are able to ask for what you want, knowing that the answer may be no. That's why at the heart of this book is this simple but potent question, what do you want? I sometimes call it the gold question, because it often elicits that response, slightly bugged eyes, and a mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. Here's why the question is so difficult to answer. We often don't know what we actually want. Even if there's a fast answer, the question but what do you really want will typically stop people in their tracks. But even if you do know what you want, what you really want, it's often hard to ask for it. We make up reasons about why it's not appropriate just now to make the request. It's because the timing's not right, or the person's only going to say no, or who are you anyway, to make such a bold-faced ask. What we want is often left unsaid. But even if you know what you want and are courageous enough to ask for what you want, it's often hard to say it in a way that's clearly heard and understood. Sometimes the responsibility for that rests with you. You found a way to hide what you want under layers of rhetoric, or been distracted from what you really want with various other, less important hopes, or trusted that the heavy hints you'd made were sufficient, or assumed that the slightly passive-aggressive comment was enough. Sometimes the responsibility for unheard requests rests with the people you're asking. They're pursuing their own agendas, or their confirmation bias means they hear something completely different from what you're saying, or they're fake listening and not really paying attention at all. But even if you know what you want, and you ask for what you want, and it seems to be heard, it's often hard to hear the answer to your request, which might be not yes but rather no, or maybe, or not that, but this instead. And on the other side of the conversation, it can be hard to understand that when someone makes a request, when she tells you what she wants, you don't actually have to say yes. You can say no, or maybe, or not that, but this instead. You can see there are many reasons that the ship of what do you want might never make it out of the harbor. George Bernard Shaw put it succinctly when he said, "The single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. The illusion that both parties to the conversation know what the other party wants is pervasive, and it sets the stage for plenty of frustrating exchanges. Not all is lost, though. One of the ways to ensure smoother sailing is to understand the difference between wants and needs. Untangling wants and needs. When IRST started getting an allowance, we called it pocket money. In Australia it came with a parental conversation about saving and the difference between wants and needs. It's a useful distinction, and I'd guess that a few seconds reaction on the difference between wants and needs brings these descriptions to mind. Want: I'd like to have this. Need: I must have this. That distinction makes plenty of sense in theory. In practice, it's hard to stop everything from just getting the upgrade to needs, which means that the distinction collapses in on itself. Marshall Rosenberg is the creator of Nonviolent Communication, NVC, a communication process that helps people to exchange the information necessary to resolve connects and differences peacefully. In the NVC model, he gives the differences between wants and needs a more practical and sustainable twist. In Rosenberg's model, wants are the surface requests, the tactical outcomes we'd like from a situation. A want could be anything from getting a report done by a certain date to understanding whether you need to attend a meeting or not. This kind of information is what typically shows up in response to our question, "What do you want?" Needs go deeper, and identifying them helps you pull back the curtain to understand the more human driver who might be behind the want. Drawing on the work of economist Manfred Maximum Neef, Rosenberg says that there are 9 self-explanatory universal needs: affection, creation, recreation, freedom, identity, understanding, participation, protection, subsistence. When you ask someone, "What do you want?" listen to see if you can guess the need that likely lies behind the person's request. For example, when someone says, "I want you to talk to the VP for me," he might really be needing protection, "I'm too junior," or participation, "I need you to do your part in this project." When someone tells you, "I want to leave early today," she might really be asking for understanding, "It's difficult at home," or creation, "I need to go to my class." When someone says, "I want you to do a new version of the report," the base need might be freedom, "I don't want to do it," identity, "I want you to know I'm the boss here," or subsistence, "My success depends on your getting this right." You can see that recognizing the need gives you a better understanding of how you might best address the want. And there's a right side to that as well. As you frame your own request for what you want, see if you can articulate what the need is behind the request. Ask a question. Trade answers. I was not a successful law student. I remember almost nothing from my classes, and I ended my studies by being sued by one of my lecturers for defamation. It's a long story, but one thing that has stuck in my brain is that the essence of a legal contract is an exchange of value. It turns out that this principle can help you build more resilient and mutually beneficial relationships with the people with whom you work. There are times when simply asking a question is the thing to do, and there are other times when sharing your answer to that same question can increase its impact. "What do you want?" is an extraordinarily strong question. Its power is amplified when you not only ask the question of the person you're working with, but also answer the question for yourself. It takes us back to Peter Bloch's point, mentioned at the start of the chapter, about the nature of adult to adult conversations. When we each understand what the other wants, we are in the middle of an interesting and worthwhile conversation. And part of the reason for that is the neuroscience of engagement. Our new frontier, the neuroscience of engagement. As we tap into our 21st century laptops, one click on Google Earth shows that there's not a whole lot of terra incognito left. You can visit any country you want, and a few intrepid people have even visited all 195. But there are still new frontiers of knowledge to be explored, and one of the most exciting is neuroscience, the study of the brain. Using creative experiments and sophisticated technology, such as fMRI and EEG machines, we are starting to see that the art of leadership has its basis in science. We can now begin to see what really works and what doesn't work in our attempts to engage with those we manage and influence. As we're at the heart of this book with this, the foundation question, now is a perfect time to make the connection between your coaching habit and your head by looking at the neuroscience of engagement. 5 times a second. The fundamental organizing principle of the brain, neuroscientist Evan Gordon's words, is the risk and reward response. 5 times a second, at an unconscious level, your brain is scanning the environment around you and asking itself, is it safe here? Or is it dangerous? It likes safe, of course. When your brain feels safe, it can operate at its most sophisticated level. You're more subtle in your thinking, better able to see and manage ambiguity. You assume positive intent of those around you, and you're able to tap collective wisdom. You're engaged and you're moving forward. When the brain senses danger, there's a very different response. Here it moves into the familiar GHT or right response, what some call the amygdala hijack. Things get black and white. Your assumption is that they are against you, not with you. You're less able to engage your conscious brain, and you're metaphorically, and most likely literally, backing away. And it's not a balanced decision. For obvious evolutionary reasons, we are biased to assume that situations are dangerous rather than not. We may not be right, but over the course of humankind's evolution, the successful survival strategy has been better to be safe than sorry. In other words, if you're not sure about a situation, you'll default to reading it as unsafe and start backing away. When will the rhetorical questions end? George Carlin. Wait, come back. And there's the challenge for you as a busy and ambitious manager. You want those you interact with, your team, your boss, your customers, your suppliers, to be engaging rather than retreating. You want your people to feel that working with you is a place of reward, not risk. And you also realize that you want to feel like you're safe so that you can stay at your smartest rather than in fight or flight mode. So how do you influence others' brains and your own so that situations are read as rewarding, not risky? There are 4 primary drivers. They spell out the acronym TERRA that influence how the brain reads any situation. TERRA is a handy acronym as it brings to mind terre with the reliance that a specific location has on the taste of the wine made from the grapes grown there. When you focus on terror, you're thinking about how you can influence the environment that drives engagement. T is for tribe. The brain is asking, are you with me or are you against me? If it believes that you're on its side, it increases the terror quotient. If you're seen as the opposition, the terror quotient goes down. E is for expectation. The brain is figuring out, do I know the future or don't I? If what's going to happen next is clear, the situation feels safe. If not, it feels dangerous. R is for rank. It's a relative thing, and it depends not on your formal title, but on how power is being played out in the moment. Are you more important or less important than I am? Is the question the brain is asking, and if you've diminished my status, the situation feels less secure. R is for autonomy. Dan Pink talks about the importance of this in his excellent book Drive. Do I get a say or don't I? That's the question the brain is asking as it gauges the degree of autonomy you have in any situation. If you believe you do have a choice, then this environment is more likely to be a place of reward and therefore engagement. If you believe you don't have a choice so much, then it becomes less safe for you. Your job is to increase the terror quotient whenever you can. That's good for the person you're speaking with, and it's good for you. Asking questions in general and asking what do you want specifically will do that. It increases the sense of tribiness, as, rather than dictating what someone should do, you're helping him solve a challenge. And in doing so, you're increasing not only his sense of autonomy, you're assuming that he can come up with answers, and encouraging him to do so, but his rank as well, because you're letting him have the and go RST. The question "what do you want?" strongly eats the drivers of rank and autonomy. Expectation. The other factor may be a little depressing. A question contains more ambiguity than an answer, but that's okay. Your goal is to raise the overall terror quotient, and by asking questions you do just that. Build your new habit here. Write out the moment, the person, and perhaps the feelings that are your trigger. The trigger for this habit is when you, or he, or the conversation feels a little stuck. You may be circling through options and none of them feel quite right or exciting or engaging. It can also be when he is procrastinating on taking action, or you are, and you're not sure why. Or it can be any time you're in a slightly fraught conversation with someone on your team, your boss, a customer, a vendor. Perhaps the conversation goes over the rails and hasn't really got started, and you're wondering how to get things back on track. Write out the old habit you want to stop doing. The trap of the old habit is that you think you know what they want, and sometimes they think they know what they want. So the instead of here is when you're pretty sure you know what they want, but haven't actually asked them, or when you keep going, even though you think you're missing something, or when you try to impose your idea, or your opinion, or your course of action, or when you're stuck and not taking action on something, and you're not sure why. I will describe your new habit. It's simple. Ask what do you want? For bonus points, tell the person what you want as well. Watch it work. Watch the short videos at thecoachinghabit.com/videos to deepen your learning and help turn insight into action. The terror quotient. See how to translate the neuroscience of engagement into tactics and behaviors that will help you and others stay engaged. When I asked Lindsay, our researcher, to dig into the question "what do you want?", she took me into the world of psychotherapy, and I went there reluctantly. Therapy in its many forms can of course be an extraordinarily effective intervention, but it doesn't typically have a place as a tool for managers to wield in their organizational lives. However, there's insight to be gleaned here from a school of therapy known as solution-based therapy. They have a go-to question called the miracle question. Several variations exist, but in essence it's this. Suppose that tonight, while you're sleeping, a miracle happens. When you get up in the morning tomorrow, how will you know that things have suddenly got better? The miracle question helps people to more courageously imagine what better, and much better, really looks like. A 10x improvement, not a 10% tweak. But I think that much of its genius is that it also deliberately focuses on the end before the means. In other words, start with the end in mind rather than, as often happens, collapsing the what of the outcome with the how of the next steps and immediately getting discouraged. The foundation question "what do you want?" is direct rather than indirect, but it has the same effect of pulling people to the outcome, and once you see the destination, the journey often becomes clearer. If you enjoyed this audiobook and want to hear again, be sure to click that subscribe button and click also the notification bell to switch between getting all notifications, and like and share. Leave your comment and suggestion below. Thanks for watching.